Hey guys, and welcome to Coding for Kids. In this video, we are going to be learning about HTML forms. So let's get started. So first, let's look at the overview of this video. Today, we are going to be learning what is a HTML form. We're going to be also learning the HTML input tag, the text field and text area, the email and password field, radio buttons and checkboxes, the submit button and the label tag, the name, value, and ID attribute for the input tag, field set, and legend tag, and finally we're going to be doing some coding. So I know it looks like a lot, but trust me, these are very small topics, so it's not going to take very long. So what is a HTML form? So a HTML form is used to collect data from the user. A form can contain text fields, password fields, email fields, radio buttons, menus, etc. The input is most likely then sent to a server to process your user information. You can use the form tag to define a HTML form. So you can see there are just some very small elements of a form. So you can see these are the text fields, also our submit button. We also have some radio buttons right here. So yeah, so that is a HTML form. So now let's look at the HTML input tag. So the HTML input tag is the most important it's the most important tag in a HTML form. An input tag can be used in many different ways based on the type attribute. So the type attribute kind of decides, is it a text field? Is it a password field? Is it an email field? Is it a radio button? Is it a checkbox? Is it a text, not text area? Is it a submit button? So all of that depends on the type attribute. So now let's look at the text field and text area. So to create a text field in your web page, you use the type attribute. So right here you can see the input type equal to text because it's a text field. So you can see right here we have some text fields that are asking for first name and last name. To create a text area in your web page, you will use the text area tag. So there is an actual tag for the text area, and the attributes inside are the rows and columns. So it decides how many rows you have and how many columns you have. That is the text field and text area. The text field is almost kind of like a one-word answer, while the text area is more like multiple sentences. So that's the kind of that's the difference between both of them. Then there's the email and password field. So the email fields let the user enter their email. You can add a placeholder right here. You can see there's kind of this light gray text that is just like an idea of what the user should put inside. So you would put type equal to email because we're putting an email field. And then our placeholder, I just put a kind of very simple Gmail. And then the password field lets the user enter their password in. So you can also add a placeholder for this too. So you'd put the type equal to PWD. That's just the short form of password. And then our placeholder is just a random password. So that is the email and password field. So now radio buttons and checkboxes. So the radio button lets the user select only one choice from the limited number of options available. For example, you can see when it says choose your favorite drink, we can only choose one of them. We can't choose nothing, or we can't choose multiple. So you would see right here, you can put radio as the type. So that is how you create one radio button, just one. Like here, we just only create one. The checkboxes let the user select none or more choices from a limited number of options. So the only difference between the two are, first, this has a checkbox while this is just a filled in circle. Also, you can only select one choice, while here you can select none or multiple. So you add one checkbox like so. So you just put type equal to quotation marks and then you put checkbox. So that is the radio button and checkbox. Now let's look at the submit button and the label tag. So the submit button lets you the user submit their data or information. You can add the submit button like so. So you just put type equal to submit. The label tag defines a label for many form elements. A label is very useful when you add the for attribute because it can locate the user to the input. So this is how you add a label. So you can see right here, you would just put the label tag and then a closing label tag. The for attribute, basically what happens is if you click on this label, it'll locate your cursor right over to the input or text field. You'll get this more when we actually look at the form I did, because that will have this label type. But yeah, so this basically what happens is the for, if you click on the label, it'll locate your cursor right here. So now let's look at the name, value, and ID attribute for the input tag. So you've probably seen the name, value, and ID attribute all throughout the slideshow. And what happens if for the name attribute, the name and the ID is more with like JavaScript. So you'll only really need to have it when you do JavaScript, because right now our form, it just has the components and the elements. It doesn't really have any interactivity, which JavaScripts add interactivity with your web page. So only if we add JavaScript, this form will actually be complete. But right now we're just going to be learning about the elements. But yeah, so the name attribute lets the data get sent. If it is omitted, the data will not be submitted. That kind of rhymed, but yeah. So what you would do is you would just put name equal to and give it some random name. In the name attribute, multiple elements can have the same name, but the ID attribute is not like that, because the ID attribute only it specifies a unique ID for an element. So it must be unique within the HTML document. For example, if we put f_name for the ID, none of the other components can have the same ID. Otherwise, it's not an ID and it won't work. So the value attribute sets up the value for the input elements. This is how you use it. So you just put value equal to submit. And you can see in our button, when you looked at our submit button, there was text inside of our button, and how we add that text is using the value attribute. So that is the name, value, and ID attribute. So now let's look at the field set, legend, and break tag. So the field set tag lets you give an outline around your form. You can see right here. You can add the field set tag like this. So you can see we have an opening field set tag and an ending field set tag. You'll add the opening at the very beginning of your form, and you'll add the ending field set at the very end of your form, so it goes all the way around your form. The legend tag gives a caption inside of the field set tag. You can add the caption tag like so. You would just put an opening legend tag and a closing legend tag, and inside you would put whatever your text is. So you can see right here, this would be your legend. The break tags allows your inputs to be on separate lines instead of the same one. You can add a break tag like so. So you can see there's no closing, just an opening. And this just helps it be on separate lines. You can add spaces. You can put it on separate lines. So I'll show you this tag later on. So now let's do some coding. So it's time to code. So let's go to code.org and click on the web lab. Now it's time to make our form. So I am just gonna go over to code.org. I've already created the form just because it takes a long time to do so. So I didn't want you guys standing around and waiting for me. So I already made it, and we're just gonna be going over it so you guys understand a little bit more. So guys, we are in the HTML form. We are in the form I created. So first you can see right here we have our form tag right here, and I'll just add a little space. Okay, so we have our, actually first in my body I've set a background color, this light gray color. If you can see, it's kind of occupied by the form. But yeah, so in the little corner you can see there's a little light grayish color, so I just put style equal to background color in the body. Then in our form we have the field set, and I also set the background color to this like gray color, and then our closing field set tag is somewhere in the bottom. But yeah, so our legend has personal information right there. And then we have a break tag. So what this does, it leaves like a little like line of space between our text field and this legend. Then we have our label, and it says for equal to name. So what happens is when we click on enter name, our cursor directly goes to the input box. You can see that in all of them. All of the text fields and email fields and password fields. So we just added the for attribute. And then we have enter name. And then in our input, we have the type as text. And then we have our name and ID and placeholder. Then we have 2 breaks. So what that'll do is for the first break, we'll just make this enter email be on a separate line. The second break lets there be some space in between. If we delete one of the breaks, you'll see it's smushed together, and I don't want that. So that's why I added the second break. So that just makes it a little bit more neat. Then we have our enter your email, and this is an email field, so you can see we have our placeholder as a email. And then the next one is enter password. So this is where you would enter your password. So we have our ID, name, and placeholder as a random password. And then confirm password is just another password field. We just kind of repeated whatever we did. So that is the text field, email field, and password field. Then we have a radio button. Or radio buttons. So you can see right here, our first radio button this is all about your gender. So you can see right here, actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add 2 breaks here. So there's a little space there. Also in the hobbies, let me do that. Okay, real quick. Okay. So our first radio button is the type is radio, and we have our values and name and ID. Well, not ID, not here, but yeah. And here you can see we did the same thing right here. And then we have other. So we have male, female, and other. Then we have our hobbies, which is just our checkboxes. So first you can see we have art, reading, sports, dancing, cooking, swimming, and then other. So you can see all of them have the type as checkbox, and then they have their own IDs and names. So you can see we have all of them on separate lines because we added a break tag in between all of them. Then finally we have our address, our text area. So you can see right here. And let me just add a little space. So we have our text area. So we have our address, and then we have a little break, and then we have our text area. Our rows is 6, our columns is 80. So that's why it's so big, but it is an address. And then right under it, finally, we have a submit button. So you can see right here, let me scroll down. We have our submit button. So our type is submit, our value is submit information, and then I just created the background color to white so it kind of contrasts between everything. And then we have our ending field tag, and that is it with the form. So that's how you create a form in HTML. So it's really easy, and it's also super duper cool that we can create our own form. So you don't need to do something super fancy like this. You could just say a quiz about me or something like that, or a math quiz, or you could create something like that. Something like you don't need to do this personal information form. You can do you can have so many other types of forms. So that was it for this little form and its code. So now I'm just gonna go back to the slideshow, and we're just gonna quickly end the video. So today we learned about a HTML form and what is it. We learned about the HTML input tag, the text field and text area, the email and password field, radio buttons and checkboxes, the submit button and label tag, the name, value, and ID attribute for the input tag, field set and legend tag, and finally we did some coding. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and like and share this video if you really enjoyed. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys!